Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're going to be covering is one of those holy grail sequels that when we first started this podcast 4 years ago, me and Jamie said we got to do. I know one of mine was Weekend at Bernie's 2. Another one was Death Wish 3. Still have a couple that are out there, but man, after next week, we're going to scratch one off the list. Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And for it, I talked with, probably, I say this a lot, but man, one of my favorite guests that I ever connected with, actress Marjean Holden in the movie. She plays Sheeva, the fan favorite character that she said after doing this role, even though her fight scene was cut, we talk about that. We talk about her audition process and how much she wanted that role and how much she fought for it. So it was kind of disappointing for her, obviously, not having that big fight scene in the movie. But we talked about probably some of the factors that were going on in the mid-90s when it comes to, special effects and visual effects. And we talked about that a lot. And man, I'm telling you, out of so many people I've interviewed, probably over 150, 125, I don't know exactly the number, origin stories I love. And I got to say, Marjean's is one of those that her journey from Minnesota to Arizona State to LA is quite fascinating because there are so many dominoes in place that fell the right way for her to go from Arizona State, where she was going to school, and she was modeling in France. We talk about that. Just the fact that Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is the crux of all of that. So I don't even want to spoil it because I think it's such a cool story, the way that all happened. And then the fact that she also does stunt work. So she was doing stunt work. Somebody approached her and said, hey, you ever tried doing stunts? Then she's working on Speed. She's working on John Carpenter's Vampires, which is, I got to say, one of my favorite stories that I've ever heard in this podcast. It was so awesome. She worked on Speed 2 doing stunts, Blade, Bordello of Blood, Bulletproof, so much. And then acting-wise, she's in so many cool movies. She worked with our friend Kathleen Kinmon on a movie. She was in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, A Different World, just so many different roles over the years. But obviously a big one was Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And then getting a series, that's what an actor always wants. She worked on Crusade, which I thought was so cool talking to her about that because the cast in that was really neat for the time. It was like all those people were getting ready to get big, like Daniel Day Kim, Gary Cole, and of course Marjean. There were so many people in that, and then boom, the next year she does what everybody wants to do and lands a series regular role on Beastmaster. So that was a pretty neat story as well. But yeah, I just love hearing her stories about Hollywood and all these other avenues she almost went into. But man, you're going to like this one. Me and Marjean, I'm a little giddy right now because we connected like in the summer of 21, and then she proposed a time, and then something came up with me. Probably my daughter wasn't feeling well or something, and then we just lost touch. And then I went into my email because we needed somebody to chat with, and I was like, man, you know what? Maybe Marjean will answer. Boom, she answers that night, and then we talked 3 days later. I love that. So much fun. Okay, do me a favor. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, you look great. Is that a new shirt? Man, I love it. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, share, follow us on social media at Sequels Only. If you use YouTube, subscribe there too. We put unedited video interviews on there. And then also all of our sequel reviews are on there as well. And then also, if you haven't heard before, I helped actor Larry Hankin. You know him from Seinfeld. He was Mr. Heckles on Friends. He has like 200 credits. You know him from so many things if you see his face. If you Google it right now, Larry Hankin, you'd be like, oh, I know that guy. So I helped him put together his book. It's called That Guy, A Cautionary Tale. And what I'll do is I'll put that link in the episode notes if you want to check it out. If not, that's fine too. But yeah, so yeah, That Guy, A Cautionary Memoir. I always mix those words up. They both sound great because it's a great book. But so that's it. Without further ado, here is actress, stunt woman, and we also talk about her directing that's on the horizon, Marjean Holden. Any good nuggets or anything that, yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, so it's funny. We connected sort of, it was definitely 2021. I don't think it was 2020.
Right.
I think it was like summer of 21. And obviously the world was on fire and everything. And it's so neat when I looked at your IMDb, and now I look again, like when I reconnected with you, and it looks like
Uh-huh.
you got some things back in the works. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few things going on,
That's
so
really exciting.
it's good, you know. Now I just need to find my angel investor and I'm good.
Oh, for something you're writing or producing?
It's something I'm producing and directing. S-
Cool. Have you directed before?
Yeah, I did a short before, but it's one of those things where it was really bizarre because as soon as I got behind the camera, I was like, "Oh, this is really natural." Supernatural for me. So I went, uh-huh, okay. And then a script came to me through Darren McBee, who I was in Mortal Kombat with.
Oh, nice.
And he had tried to get this thing off the ground in the 80s and was like, oh, I want you to direct this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're in the works with that.
That's cool. How did directing come about? Was there like a short film festival and you were like, let me take a stab at it? Or.
No, it was somebody that I had met in the industry like, oh my God, 20 years ago. And he was a fan when I was acting and was like, hey, I have this comic book that I really want you to star in,
Oh, wow.
the feature film of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it just has never happened. And then a few years ago, he was like, well, do you want to direct? And I'm like, yeah, I want to direct. That's always been my plan, was to go from in front of the camera to behind the camera, always.
Nice.
And he was like, well, let's do this short film. And I'm like, okay. And we ran into some complications and things like that, but it's done. But as soon as I did that, I was like, okay, I need to do this more.
Yeah. No, I've talked to people and you've done what every actor wants to do is to get on a series that you're on there for a while with
Yeah.
Beastmaster. And I don't know if there's like a certain episode limit that actors that shows have to be, but a lot of times, and I never knew this until I talked to the name escapes me. An actor that was on he was on Star Trek Voyager, and he said like in the second year when they knew like, hey, this is working, they were like,
Hmm.
hey, do you want to try to direct? So there was like 1 week every year that he was like
Yeah.
watching everything and learning. Did they offer that on that show?
No. I mean, we only went 3 seasons on Beastmaster.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it was, I came on season 2, and then season 3, they were like, oh, we're not going to continue.
Ah,
I was like, ugh. But I had written a script that was, like geared towards season 4, and I submitted it to them, and they were like, this is really good.
wow.
We're not going to make it, but it's really good. So that to me was really, when I talked to the showrunner about it, and he was like, Marjane, you've got what it takes to be a writer, and you should pursue it. He said because he came from being an actor and was like, as soon as I started writing and directing, that's when my whole world just opened up. He said, and I didn't miss acting at all.
Yeah.
So
No,
I was like,
I could see
cool.
that. You learn everything, while you're in front
Hmm.
of the camera, and then when you're behind the camera, you know the things to tell actors because you did the job before. And they
Yes.
respect you more because you're like, I've done it for 30 years, 40 years, and then they'd be able to help them out. But I think Beastmaster's so fascinating because it's so crazy. They did that Beastmaster TV movie, like I think like 2 years before that. That was like originally supposed to be like a Beastmaster 4, and then
Hmm.
they were going to try to launch it into a movie. And it's so crazy the people they got to be in that show, and it was just like a one pilot movie. It was like Patrick
Right.
Kilpatrick, Tony Todd was in it,
Uh-huh.
and obviously Mark can't think of his name.
Singer.
Mark Singer was in it. And you're like, wow.
Hmm.
But that's so cool that there was a series. But here's what
I
I would
know,
like to find out from
right?
people the most is
Okay.
how did it all begin? So you grew up in Minnesota.
Yes. Well, I was born in Minnesota, moved to Colorado when I was almost 8, and was there until I graduated high school. And in 4th grade, produced, directed, and starred in my first production.
Wow.
The
Okay.
Three Little Pigs. Because that's what you do when you're in fourth grade, right? So we had done this play, and it was, I got an accommodation at school, like an award for doing that.
Nice.
And I came home and I told my mom, I'm going to be an actress. And she was like, oh, that's nice, dear. Like, okay. And then when I went to college, I had met some people that were doing a short film and they needed production assistants. So I went and I was like, yeah, I'll help you guys. They're a bunch of college guys and they're, directing and producing and they're like getting into the business. And I was like, cool, I'll come help you, and I just kind of, did whatever they needed to be done, right, in production.
Yeah.
And they said to me, so, hey, there's this film that's going to be shooting and they're looking for production assistants. You should go and apply. And I went, okay. So I went over to the production office and applied as a production assistant on a movie called Campus Man.
Campus Man. Who was in that? Anyone?
John Dye, Kathleen Wilhoit, Steve Lyon, and oh my God, she was on Army Wives.
And this was at the school you were at? They were going to shoot at the college?
This was at ASU. This was at ASU.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So John Landau was the producer.
Okay.
And yeah, and I was like, oh, I need a job. So they hired me. They hired me as a production assistant. So I worked in the office from the minute the production started until the very end of the production. I was the last, like me and one of the accountants were the last people in the office. We literally shut the office. And after that production, another production came to town and they were looking for production assistants. So I was like, hey, I've got, experience. And I went over to their office and got a job over there. That happened to be Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Whoa. That shot at ASU too?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. And Steve Herrick was the director on that. And there was a part in there for a student giving a speech on stage. And I had gotten a job as a model for a magazine over in France and went over, shot all of the editorial stuff, came back. And as soon as I came back, the director and Steven said, hey, there's this part. I've auditioned everybody here and I didn't like anyone. Do you want the part?
Oh my
And
God.
I went, sure. So that's how I got my first part in the film industry.
Oh my God. Wow. So
Yeah.
how did modeling come about? Just, I know my buddy went to ASU. This is, he went in like the 2000s and there's like Miss ASU and they do like that. Is that something they did in the 80s too or no?
I mean, they might have, but that's not how
Big party school.
That's not how I got into it. Huge party school.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a Sigma Nu little sister, so I was around all the fraternity row and all of the parties and all of that stuff. But I really was like, hey, I want to be a model, and found an agency there and just kind of sort of started doing things slowly and really kept going. And then when Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was wrapped, there was one of the production, at the time she was, I don't know if she was a line producer or whatever, but she needed her car driven back to LA. And I was like, I'll drive it back for you. No big deal. Because she was going on to another production and she couldn't take her car back. So I drove her car back to her place in LA. There was our special effects guy, Barry Nolan, was like, hey, do you want to move to LA? If you're moving to LA, I have a condo in North Hollywood. Do you want to rent it? And I'm like, yeah. Do you want to see it first? Nope. If it's yours, I don't need to, And then, got my sister and my brother and was like, we're moving to California. Okay.
Were they older, younger?
Older. They're both older.
Nice.
And moved to LA in May of 1987.
Wow. And then that's
Yep.
like where it took off, like your IMDb, like right away. Was it from the line producer or the special effects guy? Did they put you in with anyone, or you just went to open casting?
No, I just went to open castings. I, hit the road and tried to get agents and found an agent and then met some other girls and just kind of started working in the industry and was like, I worked up at Universal Studios for about 3 months as a tour guide. I thought, oh, this will be a great way to, get my foot in the door. Not really. Because all you're doing is really doing the tour. That's it. So, but I learned a lot about the film industry. I learned more than I could ever want to know about Universal Studios and all of the production there. And it was, it was really cool because we had to know everything from the start of the tour to the end of the tour. So, and my brother worked as a tour guide as well.
Nice.
We were one of the only brother-sister tour guide teams. And we used to have we'd go from the upper lot down, we'd have to drive down into the lower lot where the tour really started, where there were things you could see, because the first part of the tour was just the upper part of Universal, and then you drove down this long hill, which was like the hill of death for everybody because if you got stuck on the hill, there's nothing to point anyone to see except the hill, right? There's nothing there. So you just end up talking, and you're just talking and talking. And if you run out of like your material, you run the risk of getting to one of the other spots on the tour, which was right next to like the construction warehouse, like the mill.
Yeah.
Zero to talk about there. So you didn't want to like tell all of your stall stories at the very beginning of the tour, because otherwise then you'd have nothing to talk about. And then it was just like, and we're just going to be quiet for a few minutes.
Yeah, we're just going to hang out. Did you guys go through like the neighborhoods that were built out, like the Griswold's neighborhood and everything? Cool.
Yeah, at that time, what did we go through? We went through Times Square, which was for Back to the Future.
Oh, nice.
Right? The clock tower. So that was there. New York Street was there. We'd go through King Kong. There was a big King Kong stage. So we'd go through King Kong. And then at the end, we'd go through the Murder, She Wrote set and through Jaws. And then up through where the Bates Motel was, and then all the way up at the end of the tour was, you'd go through this tunnel, and it was like this avalanche tunnel. It's like the tram is, it's turning, and everyone's freaking out, and if you get vertigo, you're like, ugh, you gotta kind of like just close your eyes and look ahead, So, and then the tour was done, and we'd say goodbye. See you later.
Then the next group. No, it's sad. They just knocked down that back lot, the Universal, where they did the Griswolds and like Gremlins and Lethal Weapon. And I was talking to Patrick Laberto, who was like on Little House on the Prairie and stuff. And I was talking to him like 3 weeks before because he was a kid actor. He's like a historian. Like he was telling me all these stories. And like 3 weeks later, I was like, I saw this video online and I'm like, oh, this is sad.
Yeah,
that they're doing
super sad. There's a bunch of sound stages back there now.
Yeah.
So,
not cool.
Yeah,
not cool.
which is sad. I mean, I used to live right across the street from there, and we could see, the Bates.
That's awesome.
House, and that was the the whole Hitchcock set and stuff like that. But
yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. You're sort of buddy. I don't know if you were friends with him for Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but Brian Thompson started his career on Universal, and that's how he got the
Conan show.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Did you know was he there still?
He was, let's see. Yeah. Brian was still there.
Whoa. Because Cobra. Cobra was right around that time. Yeah. Wow.
Brian, Darren McBee, like a bunch of the Gladiators, Gary Casper, Karen Shepard, Mark Dacascos, all of them.
So cool that there's that many
Yeah.
people. He was saying like the competition of it because you wanted to be that number one Conan for like that big time slot. And then if a guy got
Yes.
sick or he didn't show, it was like he'd be like, it would keep switching and he'd keep switching. He said he remember when he got that phone call that day that he got the movie and he was like, I didn't know if they were going to be excited for me because they were auditioning for stuff and not getting the yes. And that's pretty cool
Yeah.
that you were there at that same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
So what was that first role? So while you're there, obviously you're auditioning. Are you modeling when you're in LA or
Yeah.
doing commercials too?
Yep. I modeled for 10 years. I did
Nice.
commercials all the way up until I stopped in 2005. So, but I primarily, after I was modeling for about 10 years, I mean, I had a great agent, Stars. Derek Washington, my agent for modeling was amazing because he would push, like he kept pushing. Like he's like, and you got to do commercials. Because I wasn't even really thinking about commercials when I first got out there. I was just like, hey, I'm going to model and I'm going to be an actor. I
Yeah.
didn't really kind of put acting with commercials. And he just started pushing me towards commercials and doing a bunch of stuff in commercials. And um, yeah. And then after 10 years of modeling, I was like, ugh, I
Yeah.
don't think I can model. I can't do any modeling anymore. I just really, I stopped having the desire for that and really put myself full on into acting and started training with my acting coach, Rick Walters, who passed away last summer at the ripe old age of like he was well into his 90s,
Oh wow.
and was still teaching.
Wow.
Was still teaching. Yeah. And, I started training with him, let's see, 87, 88, 89, in 89, and was with him for forever. And then when I stopped in like 2005, I just stopped going to class because I wasn't going to do any acting and went into the personal growth world and was leading seminars and did
Wow.
that for years and years. And then when I moved back to LA in 2018, started going to class again.
Nice, nice. What was
Yeah.
that first role? Obviously, this
So-
is something you wanted to do since you got that accommodation in fourth grade. But was there like the first time you were on a set that you nailed a role? Was it like a different world, or that you were like, you know what, this is something I could really do for
Well-
the rest of my life?
Right. Well, the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was one that was just like, that really hit
Yeah.
because it got me in the union and
Oh, yeah.
I made a ton of money and I was like, yeah, I can do this. Like I can do this. But then when I really started going out on auditions consistently, I would get some every once in a while and then I wouldn't get some. And my first acting coach in LA, Floyd Levine, he's Brian Robbins. Brian Robbins. Tolan Robbins. They had a huge production company. He was on Saved by the Bell. So his dad, Floyd Levine, was my acting coach, the first acting coach I had in LA. And he always said, he was like, you know what? One day it's you, one day it's them. One day it's them and not you. So it just was what it was. And he's like, Hollywood thrives on mediocrity. If you're too good, you may not get the roles.
Yeah.
If you're just kind of average, you'll work. So, and I was in this really interesting category where I was 6 feet tall and there were not a
Yeah.
lot of leading men that were taller than 5'7", 5'8".
I know. Yeah, I know.
So, one of the first roles I got let's see, it was 1990. In 1990, I got a film called Sweet Justice. And Sweet Justice was about this group of gals, ex-special forces and stuff, who come back together to bust some bad guys or whatever. I can't even
Yeah.
remember the full story. But on that production, I met a guy who was a stunt coordinator. and he was a stunt coordinator for one of the biggest groups, Stunts Unlimited. And he said to me, he's like, hey, I know you're like this big actress and stuff, but if you ever want to do any stunts, let me know. And I was like, well, what would I have to do? And he was like, well, just depends on what you want to do. You do fights and everything, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, sometimes they just need someone to just jump out of the way, or just to keep their eyes open and do ND stuff. And I went, okay, cool. And literally like 2 to 3 weeks later, he called and was like, hey, you need to go see this other stunt coordinator because they're looking for a double on Speed for one of the actresses.
Wow.
Okay. So I go in and I meet Gary Himes, who is the stunt coordinator on Speed. And he's like, yep, you're perfect. And I was like, great, I'm going to be doubling somebody. But there was a gal on the bus who was like this featured extra on the bus who was 5'11". And I went, cool. And ended up having such a blast and went, okay, cool. And once one of the stunt coordinators from Stunts, he was also with Stunts Unlimited, then it kind of became this thing. Oh, hey, there's this 6 foot tall black chick and she's kind of handy. So they just kind of like, kind of like pass me around the group and here you go. Here's the black chick, because at that time there really weren't any. There were like 3 of us.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I had a very, very good career as a stunt woman as well in those early days. So
and some really cool
and that was
movies.
A blast.
Oh, I bet. No, I love talking to stunt people because I think it's so fascinating. It's so like real stunts and like watching like those 80s, 90s movies, like actually seeing the people dive out of the way, or actually seeing like CGI just sometimes just takes it away when you know it's not real looking. But no, you knocked it out of the park. It was Speed, Bordello of Blood, Bulletproof, Speed 2, Blade, like all these movies that you had the opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, you're on set, you're working. So that was like an early foray for you, like being behind the camera, because you're really seeing how everything works.
I'm just going to turn some light on here.
Yeah,
there we go. Look.
Hey.
There I am. I'm like, it's getting dark outside. I'm like, ooh, better turn this on now.
Yeah.
How about that one there? That's good. Yeah, it was, my stunt days, really my stunt days were almost way better than my acting days, because I loved working on the stunt team because it was a team. And, we always... like on Blade, there were like 10 of us. So that was a blast, And on Speed 2, there were like 10 of us or 14 of us, however many of us, right? And it was just like, I always loved being part of the stunt team. And you have your meeting and you're like, this is what everybody's doing. And then we're going to do this. And then you're going to do that. And it's like, awesome.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
What was the, like, I know they always make sure the stunts are tested because the stunt coordinator wants to make sure that you're safe. Was there ever one that you're like, I don't know, that you had to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I had gotten, one of the master vampires in John Carpenter's Vampires.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, amazing. And the stunt coordinator was the original stunt coordinator on Mortal Kombat, but on Mortal Kombat Annihilation, he ended up having another gig that overlapped and conflicted, so he couldn't do the show. So it was like, we had been wanting to work together. So he brought me in to meet John and Sandy on John Carpenter's Vampires.
That's awesome.
And he had originally called me in and said, hey, do you want to do a fire burn? And I was like, yeah, nope. Nah, I'm good. I'm good on the fire. And he's like, oh, but it's just going to be, I'm like, I do not do fire. That's not my thing. So I was at that point where I knew enough stunt people to know you don't lie about what you do. So I was like, no. And he goes, oh, hold on a second. Let me go ask them, if there's something else they want you to do. So he comes back about 20 minutes later and he goes, okay, they're going to make you one of the masters. And I'm like, okay. He goes, oh, it's no big deal. You just have to crawl out of a grave, do some fights, no big deal. And I'm like, sweet, crawl out of a grave? That sounds so up my alley. Thinking, oh, we're going to be in a graveyard and it'll be open. We'll just crawl out, super simple, easy. Yeah. First day on set. First day we go to shoot the masters. They take us out to the middle of basically the middle of nowhere in the desert out in Santa Fe. And we get to this wash and there are 8 holes in the ground with all this dirt next to it. And they were like, okay, find a hole, lay down and see which one you fit in.
Oh my God.
I'm like thinking, oh, okay. That's interesting. So we go lay down and I'm like, yeah, this works. And there was a box, right, with these 2 flaps that came over my face, go over our face like this. And then they're like, okay, everybody lay down. And we had walkie-talkies, open channel walkie-talkies inside these graves with us. And they proceeded to bury us alive.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, okay, lay down. The flaps come down and they just start shoveling dirt over us. And it's like, wait, whoa. And then it's getting heavy and there's the impact on the chest. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I didn't think I was claustrophobic until maybe just a little bit, and then it becomes a mind game. And it's like, no, just relax, just meditate with this, right? And you're trying to listen for direction because it was very specific. They were like, okay, because of the way in which we were placed, there were 3 lines of us. And then Thomas Ian Griffith, Valak, the master of the masters.
Yeah.
And so it's like it went this, and we all come out of the ground when we're on cue. Oh my God. And then it was like, hurry up.
Yeah.
Hurry up. Because air's running out and you're just like, okay, just relax. You got this. It's okay. And then we come out, do it again. It's like 4 takes later. It was like, ugh. But I tell you something, for as scary as it was the coolest scene I have ever had in a movie with all of my acting, all of my stunts. That scene right there was the coolest I've ever done.
That's awesome. I rewatched that. I watched that movie a ton of times. I think it's so underrated out of the John Carpenter movies. Mm-hmm. It's just so good.
Yeah, it really is.
Buried alive.
And it was just a blast. It was such a blast. We had so much fun.
How long would you how long were you actually buried? I know it probably felt like hours.
We were probably buried, I'd say 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Oh, man.
Which, yeah.
Yeah.
And do it again. Ooh.
Yeah.
And I remember one time thinking, oh, I'm going to be really clever. And it was the first day I'd met John. So he's super cool and he's just chill and he's behind the monitor and he's just got a smoke and a cigarette. And he's like, okay, action, let's do this. And the second time we did it, I thought I'm going to be clever because my costume was this long dress, right? And I thought, oh, I'm going to be clever because if I lift my legs up, the dirt goes kind of underneath my legs so that it's not so heavy on top of me. Only what had happened was when I came out of the ground, because he was like very specific, your hands come out first, and then your hands come out and you sit straight up. That's how you come out. And then you get up. So hands come out, sit straight up, go to get up, can't get up. Go to get up.
Huh.
And I'm like, because the dirt had caught my dress, the back panel of my dress, and was weighing it down, and I couldn't get it out of the dirt.
Oh, no.
And he was like, everything was great, except that. He's like, you're up, you're down, you're up. I was like, I am so sorry. He's like, it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm like, shit.
Well, what a great experience. It's so cool that you had that other like avenue. So when you're directing, because I know it's going to happen, you can talk to the, I've been in your spot here, go to minute so-and-so. You can tell them that story, because people like when people have done the job. There's like more of a respect. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I used to do that. But no, it's so cool that you had that opportunity, that somebody approached you and you said yes. Not a lot of people say yes. They think about it and then their opportunity's lost because they hesitate.
Well, exactly. I mean, and for me, it was kind of like a no-brainer, because I had been an athlete my whole life anyways. So I was like, what's going on? I was training boxing. I was training martial arts. I was, doing all that stuff anyway. So they're like, hey, you want to come do a fight? And I'm like, sure. Why not? Get paid for it? Why not? And then it became like, wow, I really like this. And then I started training more and working with more people and trying to broaden my skills so that I had more to offer than just, jumping out of the way of something. Yeah. And, and it was so cool. I mean, and I almost liked working. I liked working more working as a stunt person than working as an actor. And then kind of niched out that I was a stunt actor, because there was nobody called a stunt actor back then, because it was known in the industry that stunt people can't act and actors can't do stunts. And then there's this whole group of us that started working out together that were actors, that were athletic, that learned how to do stunts. And now, like 20 some odd years later, 30 years later, it's a thing. Like, stunt acting is an actual, thing, because producers will want someone who can actually act.
Yeah, and you want somebody who's the main actor that you're watching. You don't want to see like that bad toupee or that bad wig, or when they put a man in a woman's wig and you see like hairy legs like jumping off of a building or something. But that's pretty cool. So Sweet Justice, when you got that was because you had the martial arts background. Did that have fighting in that? I saw Kathleen Kinmont was in that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I met Kathleen, and we became lifelong friends.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing.
And then you were on Renegade for a couple episodes, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Did a couple episodes of Renegade fighting, which was cool. Get to use these skills.
Yeah. How did that begin? Did you do that just growing up, like in Colorado? You do martial arts? Oh.
No, I started training martial arts I had taken a couple of classes with my dad when I was young in karate. But once I got to LA and then started meeting some people and then found my Kung Fu instructor, and I was like, oh, I liked, when I dated Mark Dacascos, and his dad created One Hop Kuen Do Kung Fu. And so I started training with him. And then when him and I split up, one of his dad's students started teaching, and I started training with him. And he became my Sifu. And I trained with him for 10 years.
Wow. That's cool that you had that you had that back. So you have it all. Like, you have that opportunity, like, to be able to audition, and they like, instead of like saying like, oh, we're gonna have to get somebody that can do this fight scene, that's a 5-minute fight scene. It's like, oh no, I can do that too. And it's like, all right, nice.
Right. Yeah. It was an advantage for me, for sure.
So the big role, I think the coolest role that you had Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I think that such a neat. Obviously, the people could say what they want about the movie. It was such a cool follow up, and like you mentioned, like the stunt coordinator. I know obviously the stunt coordinator is important. There was just like these so many things that happened with the movie when it came to like some of the cast being able to be in the second one, whether it been for maybe they wanted more money or just they were booked and they couldn't do something else. But I think it's such a cool. I know, like talking to Brian. And I'll get your sentiment about the movie. But like when I talked to Brian, he like loved that movie so much because when he was in a martial arts movie and he wasn't doing the martial arts, he was like, man, why? Which with Richard Norton and I should know her name, the martial arts.
Cynthia Rothrock.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It was the movie with them two as I think she was a teacher doing karate and Richard Norton was a cop and Brian was like a drug dealer, like causing havoc in the town. But he was telling me from that movie, he was like, I really should learn this. So he like really started training and doing everything. And then just that movie. So how did that role come about? Was that just an open casting call? Did somebody refer you to it because of your stunt work or anything?
No, it was an open casting. And my agent had to push to get me in there because, casting was like, nah, and they hemmed and hawed and hemmed and hawed and hemmed and hawed. And finally, she pushed. I knew Jeff Amata was doing the stunt coordinating on it. And I just went to him and I was like, hey, like I need help getting in the door. And I think he pushed and then I auditioned again and then had another callback and then 5 callbacks later. I think I auditioned 7 times for them.
Wow.
7 times. And finally they were like, okay, I don't think we're going to find anyone else for Sheeva. And I was like, no, you're not.
Yeah. That's so cool. What was like was there any difficult parts of that role? Like, was it like, cause you wore prosthetics in that movie.
I wore the arms.
Yeah.
The most difficult part was when the fight got cut. I was
I know.
I was supposed to have, it was so,
It got cut filming or it got cut to be in the movie?
It got cut before we filmed it.
Oh, I was reading that when we were going to talk like a few years ago. I was reading about that, and I thought there was I thought it was actually filmed. So they didn't even film it.
No, didn't even film it. No, it was supposed to be me and Reptile.
Okay.
In triplicate, like Reptile triplet.
Yeah.
Can split off into multiple reptiles.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be me, Reptile, and Raiden. And they ended up cutting the Sheeva part because it was, CGI and it was expensive and it was, it was $1 million sequence. So, or so I was told. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but they're like, yeah, it's expensive. Like, and I was just like, but she doesn't fight. She doesn't fight in the movie, and if she's not gonna fight in the movie, then why is she in the movie? Because I said it's gonna piss the fans off because she's so popular in the game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So people were not happy.
Yeah, that was the Wild West of CGI. It's so funny when you watch movies at that time.
Yes.
It's really funny when you watch like Jurassic Park, and I think even to this day you watch Jurassic Park, which I know you're in Lost World, but it's so funny just thinking about it. Like there's movies that came out around that time that I'm not talking small budget like Roger Corman like B movies or anything that had their type of CGI. I'm talking like other big budget movies because it was such a big, like it was so new that you can have somebody that was like myself, young, convince someone, and then like you said, like $1 million a sequence, I believe, and they just hired the wrong person. And after you spend that money, you can only have so much money to make a film. So that's why some movies you see bad CGI because they couldn't probably redo it,
Right. Yeah. So better not do it than risk it. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, it was a bummer though. It was truly a bummer because I was really looking forward to that, and that was really going to be like, oh my God, I finally have a really good fight in a movie as this character, and sorry, no.
It's one of those
Oh, well.
series, and I saw it the other day, which it's so funny when they all came out at the same time, because that's the way Hollywood does things. Which why wouldn't you? If something's hot, you go with it. Like Street
Right.
Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is great. And Street Fighter, they're doing another movie. I don't know who's going to be in it or anything. I think it's like an early talks for it. But Mortal Kombat's one of those movies that since Annihilation came out, there have been so many fan-made movies, and I'm sure you've seen them or people
Yes.
sent you to them. But there was the one with Jax as the cop. It was like an 11-minute short, and he was a detective. It was like before he turned, and I'm like, why isn't this the movie? Nothing against the movie that just came out. I thought it was pretty good.
Right.
But it was like so cool, like almost like a prequel of seeing like these people like before everything. But
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. Before they were
What they were, yeah.
what they were. Yeah.
But no, that's
He
cool.
once was a cop.
But it stinks that your scene got cut, but it was still obviously a cool
Yeah.
experience to play that character.
Yes.
So I'm sure so many people, like you said, it was such a popular character in the game. I'm sure there's so many people that still were like seeing her on the big screen, you know?
Yeah, big time. I mean, then there's been this sudden revival. Not sudden revival. You're right. It's like I have done more interviews and podcasts about the Mortal Kombat universe than anything else. Because the 30-year reunion was just, I think, last year or something like that for the game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm just like, it's just the universe that's never going to die.
Yeah.
There's always going to be Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I think it's like it's so crazy. Like it's not like when it comes to different age groups, but like my age group, there's like such this nostalgia because at the time when I was growing up, I was born in '86. Like in that time you're growing up, like computers, like in my early part of my childhood, computers weren't big. Like if you had a computer, it was almost like in the 60s or 50s when people had a TV. It was like sort of rare. Like maybe the rich kid down the street have it. My dad was a garbage man. My mom was a waitress. So like we didn't have it until years later. But it was just like one of those things you had all these. So like video games were such a big thing. But like nostalgia, I love watching those things from the 90s, talking about things from those 90s. But that's cool that people are, it's keeping those things alive.
It's totally keeping it alive. Totally, So I'm like, hey, long live Sheeva. I don't care.
Long legs, yes. Do you have any other like from the? There's so many other credits that you have, but I think it was cool you had the opportunity to work with Carpenter again. You worked with him on Ghost of Mars,
Ghost of Mars.
The crazy thing at the time, did you when you're on that set for that movie, did you know that was supposed to be a Snake Plissken movie?
No,
and they just changed it.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't. Sandy was just like, hey, I got this kind of crazy, ghost weird character, and do you want to come in and do it? I was like, yeah, sure, of course. It's you guys, of course.
Yeah.
She goes, you're just going to be this mental patient sawing at your teeth. And I'm like, sweet, sounds great.
Isn't it so great when you really think about like the job that you get, like playing pretend? Like it's so neat. Like it's like, oh, you're doing this today, and then in 2 weeks it's like, oh, what's that job I have in 2 weeks? I have to do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then
so I mean, it's been fun.
Oh yeah, and then right around that time, Beastmaster. So we were kind of talking about it in the beginning. Anytime you can get a series that you're on for a while, even Crusade was a few years before that. So it's kind of like back to back, right? Crusade, and then did that end, and then right away, like Beastmaster, like a few months after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally. It was, because Crusade, we're kind of like sort of in that, like, are we going to go? Are we not going to go? Is it going to happen? We got 13 episodes with the possibility of 9 on the back end, and then that didn't happen. And then Beastmaster happened.
What is that like as an actor?
Oh, okay.
What is that like as an actor? Like when you're on a series like that and they go, all right, you're hired, you got the role, we got 13 episodes. Is it something that each time one's done, are people like saying anything, or are you guys looking at the ratings? Like, how does that work?
I never really watched the ratings. I just I would go to work and we would have a good time. And they're like, oh, and we're doing this episode, but we didn't get picked up. It was like, wait, what? And the fans kind of went through their whole outrage because Babylon 5 was 5 years and they were expecting 5 years of Crusade
Yeah.
on the back end of that. And when that didn't happen, it was sort of, it was like, oh, the 13 lost episodes of Crusade, but in our minds, even going through like, hey, um, we actually did pretty good in the ratings, but it was a conflict of interest with the network and the producers. So you can't do anything about that
No,
as an
you
actor.
can't. No, you can't.
Can't do anything about it. It's just like, okay, well, I guess on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's the worst thing about it. Like, it's part of life. Like, who you know or whoever's in charge, like, a guy that can come in because one guy leaves is the new head of the network, and he's like, I really don't like the show. It's like, but this show does really well. I don't watch it.
Totally.
It's terrible. And that's a cool cast. You, Gary Cole, Daniel Day Kim, like, all these people are, like, pretty much about to pop. Like, Gary at this time, which is pretty cool when you think about that time of seeing him in this type of role. He's Mr. Brady, like, around this time, 97, 98, yeah.
Yeah. And it was so much fun because it was just like, oh my God, working with Gary Cole.
Yeah.
Working with Gary Cole, and it's like, there's Gary Cole. And we used to just have, it was like a crack up. And he used to say, God, I hope this really goes, because like every series I've ever done is like not ever gone to series. And we were all like, wait, what?
Are you the bad
like,
luck?
Are you the kiss of death here? And then we didn't go and we're all like, Gary.
Gary. That's the whole thing with Ted McGinley has that curse. He was on like 2 shows in the 80s. He went on Happy Days, which was on for 16 years? I don't think people realize. And then he showed up. It got canceled. And there was another show that he was on, like right after that, was on for like 20 years. He was on for the last season. It got canceled.
Right. And it's just like, oh my God.
But no, when one door closes, another door opens. Beastmaster.
Another door opens.
And that's cool. Like, again, obviously you'd want it to be like a long, long run. But I think the idea of being on a series is great because you're working with the same people for a long time. To shoot 22 episodes, that's a long, right? That's over 2 years.
Yeah. Well, each season was about 8-9 months.
Oh, okay.
It takes about 9 months to do 22 episodes. If you factor in, like, we shot in Australia, so the seasons are different.
Oh, that must have been awesome.
And yeah, so that was cool. Living in Australia for like 3 years, it was great. And so the seasons, because they're different, summer is over December, November, December, January, February, that's summer. And all the rest of it is like, you go through summer and then fall and then, you got your spring, your winter, and then your spring, And we shot from like September. We'd shoot like September around to May, but then we'd have that time period off over the holidays, but then come back and have to do pickups and, I can't remember, or we started in May and then went all the way through January. But it was structured a little bit differently for as far as the way in which they worked with the actors down there, because they'd guarantee a certain number of days. So you got your guarantee of days, and then anything on top of that was just a bonus.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to put you in 10 out of the 22 episodes. It's like, we're going to work you the number of days, and that could span, you could work 1 day on every episode.
Yeah.
Right? But it ended up where in the first season I was in, season 2, I had a certain number of days, and then by the end of the season, they were like, hey, your character is doing really well and rating really well, and so we're going to have to take you from being the bad guy to being the good guy.
That's cool.
Because if we keep you a bad guy, we're going to have to kill you.
Yeah.
And we don't want to kill you because you're doing really well in the ratings. Yeah. So we're going to make you a good guy. So I, went from being a bad guy when I was the character was first introduced, to being a good guy in season 3. So, and then ended up getting double the days in season 3 than I did in season 2.
Nice. It's so cool.
So
the
cool.
fan saying, "Oh man, we really like this character," and then it changes everything for you. You might have been off.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it changed it all. It was awesome. Like, it was so awesome.
That's so cool. How about, I always like asking people this about their career. Like, over the years, like, obviously you don't know, like, when you're in the moment, like appreciating like what you're doing, like maybe for the first time, like the first time you're on set, like Bill and Ted, or even like your first big modeling gig. Did you ever keep any mementos over the years? Like when you were on a set, like call sheets or outfits or anything?
Yes.
Nice.
I kept every single contract, every call sheet. I had at one point in time every script. And then I thought, oh, God, they were all in storage. Then I thought, I can't keep lugging these things around. So I just kept, like, certain ones. Like, I kept my Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure script because it was the first movie role I ever spoke. So I kept that. But I kept all my contracts to see, like, where I came from. Like, this is how much I made then.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm at now. And oh my God, this is kind of cool. And I kept, I have my costume from Beastmaster.
Nice.
And I have my costume, part of my costume from a movie of the week I did called Code Red, The Rubicon Conspiracy. And there were a couple other things I think I kept here and there. Like one of the coolest things is when you're on a cast like Beastmaster or Crusade, they give you for your chair a chair back, the director's chair back. So I have my chair backs from Mortal Kombat, from Crusade, and from Hostage. Hostage was the only movie that I was on besides Mortal Kombat that I actually have a chair back from.
That's really cool.
So those are really cool.
How about Carpenter? Did he give any good gifts? I heard he gives really good gifts sometimes on movies.
God, did we have any?
Maybe when he first started, that was the thing he did.
Yeah, I don't remember, but they treated us so well.
Oh,
I mean, Sandy King is like a legend with her crews. I mean, she just treated everybody so well. And that was part of the joy of working for them, is because Sandy definitely had the gift of hospitality, and she took care of everyone.
Yeah, no, just a rock and roller, man. He's got that rock and roller mindset. Him and his boys, and then Nick Castle went on, obviously playing Michael Myers, directing. The piano player, his name slips my mind. Tommy. He directed Halloween 3, and he directed Fright Night Part 2. He's directed like a bunch over the years. Tommy Lee Wallace. He was the piano player, I think. But yeah, those three guys in a band, and then they hit it big with this Halloween movie, and then. The rest is history.
And I know, right?
Yeah.
And that's all she wrote, right?
Yeah. So what are some other things? Obviously, you angel investor. You need for the movie. Is there any?
Definitely.
Do you want to Is there any particular genres you'd want to direct? Is there one that you have your mindset on?
Yeah, I love sci-fi, fantasy, action. That's kind of my thing. I'm not really like, ooh, let me do this big drama. Not really my thing.
Yeah.
So the movies that I gravitate to are, more along the action type thing. One of the projects I'm writing is a fantasy action picture, and the Darren McBee project is just straight up like action, comedy action, and it's comedy action drama. We're making an 80s movie on purpose. Nice. So, it's about four veteran police officers who get thrown undercover as a bad 80s rock band in order to bust a drug and sex trafficking ring.
Wow.
And they're this bad hair band, and it's just like, ooh, right? So
what age are the guys?
that's really fun.
Like 40s?
No, they're much older than that.
Oh.
They were supposed to be 40s, but they're all older now because when they first started it, they were all 40.
Oh, nice.
And it's like 20 years later now, so they're like late 50s, early 60s,
Ooh.
and it's hilarious because, you know, part of the humor of it is that they are getting older, and they're like, what? How are we going to go? Why are we going undercover as like this rock band? Like, we haven't played music for 20 years, you know? So that's part of the comedy of it. And yeah.
Call Brian up. Get Brian Thompson
funny.
in that.
Yeah.
I don't know if
yeah.
There was a movie recently that came out, VFW. It was about a guy, like older guys hanging out at
I haven't seen it.
Fred Williamson, the Hammer's in it.
Yep.
William Sadler's in it.
Oh my God.
Marty Cove.
VFW.
It's like all of
I
those.
love 'em.
It's like all of that era of guys. You
That
think,
era.
and it's like these vampires from doing. Like, these people take these bad drugs, like these punks, and they get like kind of infected, and they storm the bar. But it's like such a cool movie because you see these guys that you see basically from when they were younger, grown all the way up. Like, I chatted with William
Right.
Sadler, and I think he's like one of the coolest guys. Like, great actor, and just so down to earth. Came from the middle of nowhere in New York, and then became
Right.
you know who he is. But
And became, yeah,
just like you, Minnesota to Colorado to ASU, and then
to ASU in Hollywood.
so cool. No, it's so cool, the modeling aspect, and the fact that just so happened it was at that time they were filming college movies at ASU, and
Yes.
somebody was like, "Hey, you should be a PA on this movie," and then from Campus Man you go to the next movie, and then somebody just, "Hey, can you drive my car to LA?" Isn't it crazy when you really think about these moments in life that put you where you are today, or the moments that you had in the past?
Big time. It's really like, it's wild. Like, it's wild. I think back, and you know, I had at one point in time, I don't even know where I met him. I think I may have met him at I worked as the guest list girl for the Palladium nightclub on Saturday nights for 4 years, and they had hired me because they had seen me in a music video for somebody, and they were like, "Hey, we've got an ad. We want that girl in our ad." So I did this ad, and it was this big, huge campaign for the Palladium Hollywood, and it ended up being a billboard in Hollywood. And they're like, "We want you to come work at the club. Can you come work at the club?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? I'll make, $100 a night, $400, a month with cash was like stellar back then."
Yes.
The 80s and 90s. It's like, heck yeah, $100 a night cash, I'll do it, right? And I don't know how it even came apart, but I guess, either Barry Gordy, who was, big, huge, massive music producer, had said to me, like, "Hey, do you want to, make music and, be a singer?" And I was like, "Yeah, no." And my girlfriend was like, "Look, if Barry Gordy's asking you, they'll just train you to be a singer." And I was like, "Yeah, singing is not my thing. I don't want to be a singer." And, I look back now and go, you know what? After I saw all of the friggin' singers making movies, I thought, you're an idiot, because you could have been a singer and gotten a movie.
Yeah.
Your acting career would have taken off. Oh, well.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Is what it is.
That's so crazy that he saw you, and because obviously super attractive, you were a model for all those years, and it's so great that he found you from that, and he goes, "You know what? Do you ever think about singing?"
Yeah. No, not really. I did not know how to play the Hollywood game. Just didn't know how to play it. So, oh well.
Oh well.
Is what it is.
Marjean, this has been awesome. I'm so happy we connected.
This has been
year and a half,
Doug.
2 years
Thank
later.
you. Yeah, 2 years later.
Marjean was so cool. I'm telling you, it's just so cool when you connect with somebody after so much time. And we had such chemistry going back and forth. Like just before we started recording, we were talking about so many different things, and it was just cool to hear her journey in Hollywood and being an actress. And like she mentioned, she was one of 2 African-American stunt women in Hollywood at that time, in the early 90s, which is crazy to think about there, but crazy times, obviously, and hopefully things are getting better. But man, that's insane that there was only 2 African-American stunt women in the early 90s. But man, I love talking to Marjean. I'll put all of her links in the episode notes so you can follow her, Google her, keep tabs on her. She has some new stuff coming out, Garrison 7, which is a TV series. I don't know if that's fully out yet. And then she's going to be directing like we talked about. It sounds really cool, like really awesome. I'm really happy for her. And it was cool that she divulged and gave you a little sneak peek. All right, your homework, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Our buddy, Brian Thompson, who's in that movie, which it's pretty wild that Marjean worked at Universal at the same time and they actually knew each other, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, it's like $3 to rent everywhere. I'm sure you can find it. Check it out, man. I can't wait to talk about it. How some characters could come back, some couldn't, and just it's Mortal Kombat, man. That's all. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night, guys.